Broadcasting live from the Wellness Wonderland, you're listening to the Wellness Wonderland Radio. I'm Katie, and each week I chat with the most inspirational people on the planet on how to stay inspired in all areas of life. As you listen, feel free to tweet at me at Katie Dalebout or use the hashtag Wellness Wonderland. I'd love to hear your aha moments. So grab your headphones and listen on the go, or cuddle up with a notebook as we dive in deep with authentic conversations right here in Wonderland. Welcome, Wanderers. Can I call you that, Wanderers? Yeah, I kind of like that. Anyways, welcome back to Wonderland for another week of the podcast. I'm so excited about this week's episode. It is insanely amazing. I cannot even tell you guys, I was so psyched to interview this person. You may know her, you may not know her, but her name is Caroline Dooner, and she is so cool. She is the founder of the Fuck It Diet. That's right, the Fuck It Diet. And she's amazing. She's a really, really cool lady who you're going to learn a lot about. We started to record this just like, your average everyday episode. And then it ended up that we were about 2.5 hours in, and Caroline was like, hey, can we stop recording? I really need to pee. And so we did, and we proceeded to record a little bit longer after that. And so I know what you're thinking. This episode isn't more than 2 hours long, thank God. It's not, and I cut it in half. But the interesting thing is that you're actually going to get part 2 of this episode in a couple weeks, which is really, really amazing and cool. In the meantime, though, if you do like Caroline and what she has to say, which I know that you will because I do, and it's fantastic, she is doing this free 10-day mini course that is really cool that I've also done. And so I highly suggest you check that out between now and the time that her next half of the podcast comes out, because it's really awesome. The link to that's in the show notes, and she's doing this amazing life recovery program in relation to that. So anyways, just check out the mini course and see if you like it, but use my link in the show notes. That's the best way to get to that. And one last super exciting thing that I am so psyched about, you guys, is that I'm doing a group coaching course, and it's going to be off the chain amazing. It's topical, so we're going to be covering, it's only a 3-week course, and it's priced like super duper reasonably well. And I have 3 special guests coming in to these group coaching calls that we're going to do. And like I said, the course is topical. So we're covering the holidays. So it's called How to Put the Happy Back in the Holidays. So this time, we can think of it as being really happy and joyful, and it is, and that's amazing, but it also can be kind of funky, and it can bring up a lot of emotions around what I call the 3 F's, right? So around food, around family and friends, and around finances, right? Buying gifts, and it can cost a lot of money to travel, and there can be a lot of comparison there. And then, food is a big thing when we're as humans meant to celebrate with food, but it can bring up a lot of emotions, especially during the holiday season. And of course, being around family brings up a lot of emotions, like reverting to childhood when you're around your family, and just different old patterns coming up in these holiday situations that can be a little bit stressful, a little bit joyful, but bring up a lot of emotion. So we're going to just talk about that in this really amazing 3-week course. They're going to be just these really nice, fun evenings. They're Sunday evenings, 3 evenings. The first one is in November, and it's the Sunday right before Thanksgiving. So we're going to cover food that week, and I have a special guest who you guys may remember from the podcast. Simi is the guest that week. So we're going to be talking about food. We're going to be talking about anything you want to talk about. I'm going to take extensive Q&A, so I'm going to answer all of your questions live on the air, every single one. I will stay till they're all answered, and Simi will answer them too. And we're going to talk. We're going to do a little meditation. We're going to do some journaling exercises. It's going to be just really radical and fun. Then there's like Thanksgiving week. Then we're going to take a week off where you'll just work on your homework. And then the next 2 weeks will be on. So it's the 6th, and then the week after that, I believe it's the 12th. But all these dates are in the link in the show notes, and I also sent an email out about this to my list on Monday, so you might have received that. If you have any questions about it at all, just let me know. Shoot me an email. My email is myname@gmail.com, katiedalebott@gmail.com. Any questions at all about the 3-week course, let me know. 3-week group coaching. It's going to be so much fun, you guys. The next week after we come back from the break for Thanksgiving will be about finances, and my friend Haley Knight, who's amazing and a spiritual business coach, will be there. She's an Ivy League trained psychotherapist who is now a business coach and a life coach. So she's going to be there. We're going to talk about a lot of emotions around finances and holidays, and again, answer any questions you guys have. And then the final week, we're going to talk about family and friends and relationships. And my friend Heather Waxman, who you guys probably know, she's amazing. She's a life coach and a meditation teacher and a singer. She's just way cool. We've done a lot of stuff together. I think she was like my second episode of the podcast, but she's also coming back in a couple of weeks. Anyways, I just think it would be so fantastic if everyone in the crew that listened to the podcast was also in this group coaching group. It would just be so high vibe. We could all talk to each other, and there's going to be PDFs and exercises that you're going to get with it. You're going to get direct access to me on the live calls and my guests, and we're going to just have a ball together. So the dates again are November 22nd. It's a Sunday, and it's going to be from 8 to 9:30 Eastern time or 5 to 6:30 Pacific time, starting that day, and then we take a week off, and then it's December 6th and December 13th. They're all Sundays, and it's all going to be from 8 to 9:30 Eastern time. And yeah, so the tickets to participate in that they're really cheap, you guys. I just want as many people as possible to be able to join this. So for the entire, all 3 sessions and the PDFs and everything, it's just $147. So $147, and you can just buy it really quick on my site, and that's the early bird price. So if you sign up before November 18th, it's that much, and then after November 18th, I'm just having the price go up to $167, so it's like not that much more. But if you want to save like $20, definitely sign up now, and that helps me out a ton just to know how many people are going to be there and to just know what to plan for. And I want to make sure there's enough people that it's worth doing. So anyway, so please sign up. It's going to be a really great time. I would love to have you all there. I'm going to answer every single question you have. So if it's just general life coaching stuff, or food stuff, or what body image stuff, or blogging stuff, like I'll answer whatever questions. We're just going to keep it topical for the discussion, and the discussion with the guest, and like what I'm sharing will be topical. So I really want to do this during the holidays so I can live coach you on whatever's coming up for you during those weeks. That's why we're doing it through Thanksgiving and right up until the holidays, getting ready for it. So anyways, I think this is going to be a really great time. I would love to have you guys all there and get back to like that joy and childlike excitement of the season, and share some cool guests and just have a lot of Q&A. It's going to be a great time, and I have a lot of tools to share. This time of year really used to stress me out a lot, and I would just revert to old childhood habits, and I would not feel good about myself and my body, and I would feel really unconfident, and I would just really not feel so great during that time. But now I make it really happy and comfortable and cozy and beautiful, and I want to share that with you. I want everyone to have that. So anyways, I think this will be a great time. It's really important to take a pause at this time of year and reflect on the year behind us and look forward with new goals and desires for the year ahead. And that's really what I want to do in this course as well. So, or group coaching, whatever you want to call it. It's just really simple, 3 weeks. It's going to be a really fun time. So I love you guys. I know you're going to love this episode with Caroline Dooner, and sign up for her free 10-day mini course after this episode, and sign up for my group coaching if you think it would be fun. Anyways, share the podcast with a friend, and perhaps leave a review if you haven't, and just enjoy this episode. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. I am totally fangirling over today's guest because she is I'm basically her biggest fan. That's what I told her in the email when I asked to have her on the show. But Caroline Dooner is here, and she wears many, many hats. She's an actress, she's a singer, she's a ukulele player, she's a comedian, she's a writer. What doesn't she do? She's so cool. But she also writes and mentors about body image and spiritual anti-diet stuff, which we all know I love. And she's the brain behind the wildly popular and often Googled term, the fuck it diet. And it's, as you guys know, it's basically the diet that I'm on, finally. And she lives in New York City, but today she's visiting the Wellness Wonderland with us. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, Caroline.
Oh my God, that is the best introduction I've ever gotten anywhere.
I'll go on the road with you.
Please, can I keep you around?
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to talk. It's kind of cool that I feel like most people who read the Fuck It Diet just know the one side, and it's cool that you are talking about both right from the get-go. That's really cool.
Yeah,
so,
I found I think I did actually, I was going to say I found your other stuff first, but that's not really true. I think I found your other stuff, but quickly went to your acting and singing and comedy because that's what I'm really into now. If it had been a few years ago and I was really in the orthorexic sense, I would have surpassed that and gone the other way. So I guess that's a good sign. But
it is a good sign.
Yeah, but that fascinates me. And then I was like, oh, but she also I can relate to her so much, and so it was just kind of like a triple threat.
Amazing. And I just read your article that you sent me earlier about your orthorexic time, which it was an awesome post. I'm so glad. How long ago did you post that?
Probably about a year-ish ago, year and a half ago. So, yeah. So that was kind of when I came out of the closet about it. But,
don't you find that just that act alone is healing?
Oh my God. Yeah. It was crazy because the week that I posted that, maybe for a month before that, I was I need to talk about this, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
I know I gotta do it. And then I did it, and it was ripping off a Band-Aid, and now it's all I ever talk about, I feel
right. And then there are new levels. There's always another level of honesty you can get to. Should I talk about that?
Yeah.
And it's always a good idea. It's always liberating, and it always resonates with people so much more than you think it will. The big fear is that people will be like, oh man, I can't read you anymore.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of those people did, but good for them, and it's actually helpful,
Exactly. To find your people.
Room totally. The weirdos can unite, and
exactly.
It's so cathartic to tell our stories. So let's start with your story and zoom the lens back, and I really want to hear about everything and how all these different aspects came to life, from what you do with the Fuck It Diet to your amazing one-woman show and your writing and performing, and just take us back to maybe you want to go through the lens of your relationship with food, and then also how it has impacted and is connected to the career and the industry you're in with performing.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I think I know where to start. When I was, actually, I could go way, way back, because when I was a child, I was a tiny, tiny little child who didn't think about weight at all. Thankfully, I know some people start really young, but I didn't think about it at all. But my mom was obsessed with health food. She was always talking about health food. We shopped at Whole Foods. I felt like I didn't have the same treats that my friends had. And I think another kid would have just been like, oh, well, they wouldn't have been, maybe, I mean, I don't know, actually, they wouldn't have been as nuts as I was, but I was obsessed. And and little kids love candy and stuff, but I was on another level. And I was a binge eater as a child because of that. I would go to friends' houses, and they'd be like, okay, what do you want to do? And I'd be like, let's get a snack. And then we'd get a snack, and I'd eat so much food, and they'd stare at me like I was a crazy person. And then we'd go play something, and they'd be like, so what do you want to do next? And I'd be like, can we get another snack? And I was obsessed. It was all I thought about. So much so that when my mom came to pick me up one day, the mother asked, she was like, do you feed your child? So it's that my obsession with food started early, but
How old was that?
this is like kindergarten.
But there was no body image issues attached
No
to
body
it?
image stuff. Like food was not connected to weight for me at that
Right.
time. It was just that I wanted food. I wanted the junk food that I felt like I wasn't going to get. And
That's fascinating because I remember, like, I can barely remember, but I must have had a time like that, you know, like when I didn't really realize that connection of weight and food, because I remember there was this, I don't remember exactly how old I was. I think it was around like first communion dress shopping, because I remember like I think I was a size 10 and my friends were like an 8, and that just like got me. And then somehow I made the connection of food and weight and was just like, I'm gonna diet forever.
Right. Yeah. And it started for me at 14, like with puberty. So it definitely happened, and it happened hard, and it was like could not be ignored. But the interesting thing for me is that even before it had to do with weight, just the feeling of restriction alone, and it wasn't even real restriction. Like I was fed. I got plenty of junk wherever I went, and my mom would even go to McDonald's sometimes, but I felt restricted. And that alone made me a crazy person around food, which is something that I've realized recently is significant, to think about the fact that restriction really can do that to us and make us food addicted. Whereas it's not the food, it's actually our state of mind about the food. So that's interesting to me. But when I turned 14, I went from like little waif to, not even kidding, a bra size 32E. That was like in a couple months. So I like all of a sudden I honestly think that I was probably thin, like compared to what I thought I was, but compared to how I was before, I felt so big. And the boob thing was really hard because I felt like it was this like sexual like body that I was so emotionally not prepared for, and the attention that got. And I hated it. I really, really hated it. And that alone wasn't it, though. I know I felt uncomfortable in my body. I definitely was like, oh, God, like I wonder if all this food that I'm addicted to eating, because my mom would say all the time, like, you are a food addict. You're obsessed with food. Why are you and your brother so obsessed with food? And it was because we felt denied, and she had no idea. She thought she was being a good mother by only supplying us with like almond butter and stuff. And we just felt like we were being denied real childhoods. But it was in my head that I was a food addict. So I was like, uh-oh, is this becoming a problem? But then it really wasn't until I went to the doctor, and I like didn't have a normal period, and I like should have at that point. It was 14. But I had this like, I looked the way I look right now. I looked 25 at 14, and they tested my hormones, and they said that I had PCOS, which I assume you know what that is. And but I can explain to your listeners who might not know, it's a hormonal syndrome, they call it, which really is what it is, because it's not specific. Like there are symptoms that come along with this PCOS, it's polycystic ovaries, but they're completely inconsistent from person to person.
It's funny that you bring this up. I don't know if you know who Elisa Vitti is. She has this company called Flow Living. And anyway, she was the guest that came on my show today. I don't know when this is going to be airing, but if people want to learn more about PCOS, go back to episode 73, and she talks about it. But it's just small world that
amazing. I just saw that too. I was just on your site, and I saw her picture, and I saw that the name of her business.
Yeah. Anyways,
I would actually really love to. Yeah, it is, and I want to look her up too, because I'm really into like, every sort of way that people are trying to heal this. But basically, and it was coming from my mom too. My mom had the best intentions, but it really screwed me up. So she was the one that wanted the doctors to test me for it. And she was the one who was all worried about it, that I had this thing. Because my aunt, my dad's sister has PCOS. And and the reason that everybody knew is because she had triplets, because she was on fertility hormones to conceive, and she has triplets. But the thing with PCOS is that they say that the symptoms are weight gain, infertility, messed up cycles, high testosterone, acne, and then they say that it's caused by insulin resistance, and that it can lead to diabetes, and it can basically lead to like every health problem, they say. And I was super resistant because my mom was starting to she got so panicked when they said that I had this, because I guess she'd been researching it. And I just remember I kind of have blocked out whatever conversation. I remember my mom asking all these questions about well, what do we need to do, and what's going on, and what are the blood tests saying? And it was just that my progesterone was low and my testosterone was a teeny bit high, which it's remained to be to this day. But I remember the doctor looking at me and saying, "Okay, so just don't gain weight and watch your carbs." I was like, "Okay, all right." And I was feeling very distant about it. I remember I was like, "This isn't. Everything's fine. I'm going to be fine." My mom was freaking out. She started Googling constantly. She was on all these sites for it, so nervous. And she would talk about it constantly. But I was like, okay, I'm just going to go on a diet. I am addicted to food and I'm not supposed to gain weight. And I'm just going to go on the Atkins diet, which is what was all the rage back then. And it was the low carb craze, which is still sort of going on. But I feel at least in my world, there's been a swing back for sure. In the people that I follow even. I don't even know if I were a high schooler right now, what would be the thing that I would latch onto. But then it was the Atkins diet.
I think now there's and we'll get into this hopefully, but there's so much information and so many diets out there. There's
oh my God.
It could go either way. It could be raw vegan, or it could be paleo, or it could be somewhere in between.
It would probably be paleo. I feel that's the
trendiest
thing. Yeah, and I've done them all, Katie. I've done them.
Me too. Tried them all on for size.
Exactly.
And then fuck them all.
Exactly. And I almost had to, looking back, I know I'm zooming ahead right now, but I almost had to do them all in order to know that they really don't work.
Yeah, you could, and there's truth in all of them too. I didn't mean to say F them all, but really there's good things about all of them. I learned a ton from trying them all.
Exactly. And there are people, I had a friend in college. I was a raw vegan in college, or for a year at least. And she said to me, I'm going to do raw vegan. And I was trying to come off it at the time. And she was like, I bought this book and I've been buying some foods. And I was telling her oh, well, it's a little intense. I don't know, I don't know that I believe it anymore. And she was like, well, you can eat regular dinners in this book. And when I go home and see my family, I'm just going to eat pasta or whatever. And I looked at her oh my God.
That's
you're
cheating.
So yeah. I was you're so, and it was either cheating, depending on whether I was on the diet or not. If I'd been on the diet, I would have said you can't do that. It's not going to work. But being off the diet, I was wow, I could never, that's just not how my brain works. That's totally foreign to me. The idea that you could sort of do a diet and not become totally obsessed with it.
So all or nothing with stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And for her, I feel like what it does come down to is that I was trying to, on so many levels, it became so much more than just health, of course, but I was trying to save my life. I thought that I would be, and I don't mean just health-wise. I mean, I thought that if I was able to do the diet and become healthy and skinny, it became very much about the weight too, that everything would change and everything would be great and my life would be perfect and all my problems would go away. And that really is the crux of why chronic dieters get stuck there, because it becomes this well, once I do it right, then everything's going to be great. Then I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix everything. And it's this like living for the future that it just never happens.
Yeah.
And people do that with everything. They do it with partners.
Money,
They do it with money,
relationships.
jobs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And once you notice it in one area of your life, you can start to see how it's maybe been getting into the other areas too. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to high school was like a total wash of crazy. I mean, I did the Atkins diet, I did the South Beach diet, I did this weird diet called the Rosedale diet where you like have to eat only like fish and celery or something.
Never heard of that one.
It was supposed to be like good oils. It was all about leptin. And all of these diets, my mother was like doing all this research on, and she would like
do it with you?
She would do it with me, but she wouldn't be as militant as I was because she was doing it for me. And she, you know, when I was little, she would do like the blood type diet and all those things. But the truth is she was crazy about it, like more than other people. But for some reason, she didn't feel like her whole self-worth was tied into it. So she kind of, for better or for worse, she kept dieting because it wasn't really ruining her life. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like for me, I took it so far for so long and I was so wrapped up in it and I saw my whole self-worth through the diet I was on and what my weight was and what clothes I was able to fit into that I hit rock bottom so I had to spring back. I had to look at it another way. She didn't have to do that until she saw me go through that. So in a way, it's a blessing and a curse that you and I took it so far because my mom never did. And so she just always vaguely saw her worth through her weight. And she wasn't really aware what she was doing up until being 50 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So I found these like notebooks from high school that were like so crazy miserable. Like I would write down every single thing I ate that day and like write little notes to myself and like
I did that too.
Yeah, and like
I like in the notes in class I would like I was excited when like that was maybe I didn't have a phone or something, but I would like instead of playing on my phone, I would like in the corner of my page, I was so excited to like tally up my calories and judge myself during class.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. And it was like, yeah, that's the other crazy thing. The amount of time and energy spent on this goal. And the saddest part is I thought I was being responsible. Yeah. Like not only was it a weight thing. Okay. So then we tied it in with my mother's other worry for me was that I was in theater and I wanted to pursue this. And the roles that I was going to be cast in vocally in musical theater were these sweet roles. And she was like, you can't be obese. Because that was like that was the big fear. Like people with PCOS become obese, which is not true. People with PCOS can gain weight and have trouble losing weight depending on what's happening with their metabolism. But often it's because they're put on diets and they rebel because that's what happens. And there's a binge repent cycle and it spins out of control and it makes your insulin resistance worse and it makes your hormones worse. And you think it's because you're unhealthy and you can't stay on a diet. And it's really because you're trying to be on a diet in the first place, which I did not learn till 3 years ago. But this fear, there was this huge fear of losing control and not having control. And I didn't feel like I had control either. I felt like there was something wrong with me. Like I was addicted to food. And the more I tried to diet, the more addicted to food I was. And there must be something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And why couldn't I just stick to this diet? Why was I so obsessed with eating food I wasn't allowed to eat? And I was ruining my health and I was ruining my hormones and I was ruining like it felt so connected to my worth because I felt like if I couldn't stay skinny, I was like sabotaging my whole life. And it had to do with theater, and it just had to do with what we're taught in this
Yeah.
culture about weight. You know what I mean? That if you gain weight, something horrible must be going on and you must really be lazy and not able to control yourself.
Yeah.
And that is the that's like common knowledge that if you gain weight, it means that you ate too much food and you should just not eat too much food and gain and lose the weight.
Right.
That's like how simple we think it is.
Which is so not true.
It's just not
I
true at
mean, let's just
all.
address the health at every size thing right now. Might as well.
Yes,
Because
yes.
we've talked about it before lots on the show, but I would love to hear you talk about it. And I heard you in a recent podcast where I was stalking you prior to this episode to prepare, where you talked about this study from Linda Bacon's book, Health at Every Size, which we
Yes.
both mutually love.
Hmm.
But that particular study, I remember reading in the book, but I haven't really heard highlighting it. Do you want to talk about that? Do you know the study
Sure.
I'm telling about?
Yes, exactly. This is so life-changing.
Yeah.
I read this after I decided to stop dieting because I was just so miserable, and we'll get there eventually in the
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
But um,
Well, we're kind of jumping around, but we'll make
yes,
it
and
work.
that's totally fine. I um, I decided to stop dieting, and then I read the study, which just helped. I mean, it helped me so much, just solidify that I was on the right path. But Linda Bacon, um, the specifics are not going to be staying in my head, but
Yeah, no worries.
there was a group of like 200 women or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're all clinically, in the technicality of it, however they measure obesity and overweight. They were all in the overweight or obese category. And one group was regular diet regimen. They were trying to make them lose weight, doing good old fashioned restriction and exercise. And it was like the top, expert in obesity was the one who was running this group. And the other group was I don't know how many people were in the study, but other group was Linda Bacon, and she was teaching them how to eat what they wanted and not restrict and not feel bad about what they were eating and to find food neutrality. She was teaching them how to love themselves because apparently the guilt factor is actually huge in health issues. It actually creates stress and health issues in the body to feel constantly ostracized and prejudice against you all the time for your body weight and feeling it against yourself, like I shouldn't be this way. So they worked a lot on self-acceptance and self-love, and they taught them to choose exercises that were pleasurable and joyful and not punitive at all. Intuitive. Just basically they told them to stop dieting. They taught them how to do that in a way that was self-loving and supportive. And this whole study was 200. See, I forget whether there were 200 in each group. That's what I think there was.
I'm pretty sure that's what it said.
Something like that. And it happened over 2 years. And what they found in the beginning was that the group that was trying to go for weight loss and doing the regular obesity protocol, so to speak, they all lost weight originally and they all improved their health markers. And however, what they found at the end of the 2 years is that they had all gained the weight back and more, and they were being controlled, like they had every support they could have ever needed to keep the weight off and stay on their diets. But they'd gained all the weight back and more, and their health markers became worse than they even had before they started this study. And they found in the other group, the group that was taught self-love and intuitive eating and just like an intuitive lifestyle, is that on the whole, nobody lost weight. It's possible that a couple people lost weight, but as a group, they did not lose weight. But still, all of their health markers improved, which goes to show two things. One is that diets backfire if you're looking at it over the long haul. Even when you have every desire to lose weight, you're in a study, you have weekly check-ins and a meal plan, it's still, for the majority of people, will backfire, lower your metabolism, make you gain more weight, and make your health worse to go through the yo-yo of it all. Because then when you're there, then you're in this you've been there, I'm sure, where you've been on the diet and now you're starting to rebel, or it's stopping working, and you kind of go into this panic of like every day is a new like crazy attempt to do it right. Mm-hmm. And every night is the rebellion and the binge, and it's just this roller coaster emotionally and physically. That's horrible for your body. And it's not just the binging that's bad for your body, it's the restricting too. In fact, it's all happening because of that. And so it proves, in this study that it doesn't work. Yeah. It just, that's not the way. But it also proves that the health that everyone's obsessed with, everyone's like, oh, you have to lose weight for your health. You have to lose weight for your health. Mm-hmm. It's not the weight. It's the habits. Yeah. And not just the habits. And when I say habits, I actually worry sometimes that people are like, oh, I guess I have to have healthy habits. It's not the weight loss habits. It's the way you live your life. Mm-hmm. It's the quality of life that you're giving yourself. And the more you accept yourself and love yourself and want the best for yourself and are not judging yourself based on how you look and how you weigh and how well you did on your diet today, the more likely you are to eat balanced foods.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that study's great for, cutting through the crap where in the 90s and 80s, people, they called a spade, they were dieting for vanity, and it was like mm-hmm. diet soda and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I think now just as many or more, probably for sure, more people are dieting, but no one calls it dieting anymore, ever. It's like dieting is for vanity, but I'm just being healthy. But really, they're just using that as a cover to say, I am trying to manipulate my weight to look a certain way, because it is a vanity thing. And I think that, I'm not even saying that that's right or wrong. I think, in our humanness, that we sometimes want our bodies to look a certain way, just like when we have curly hair and we want to straighten it, even though that's not natural for our bodies. Like, I think, I have an interesting relationship to that topic, which, we can get into and to what you think on that too. Like, is being at our natural size, if it's not what we want it to be, is that okay? Do we just embrace that humanness of the disconnect, or do we work on the social issue of like, maybe we question, why do I want that so much?
Right. And I think that is where it comes down to, because I was going to say that people are petrified. Yeah. Like, people are petrified to gain weight because you hear the nasty things that people say about people who have either gained weight or are fat or have always been fat. It's just this, like, you're all of a sudden fair game. Yeah. You're under fire. And it's because of this whole health thing too. Mm-hmm. It's because now we've said, like, okay, well, we have an obesity epidemic, and for the, safety of our children and also for our tax dollars, we need to make sure that everyone loses weight, and everyone who's not losing weight is lazy and unhealthy and basically like a big waste of space. That's said in so many different ways. I'm reading Linda Bacon's second book right now. It's called Body Respect. Yeah. And just seeing how, because that's become common knowledge, incorrect common knowledge, that fat is unhealthy and we have an obesity epidemic, the scientists that are doing the studies are actually ignoring data that is proving it otherwise, because they feel like that must be incorrect. There are studies. It's so sad. It's so sad because, look, if we could talk about fake foods, that are not even as delicious as real foods, and all the factory farming and all of that, like that is stuff that I actually can happily support. Like, let's move towards a more grassroots movement. I still don't believe that we should be obsessed with worrying about whether we're putting like good or bad things in our mouths, because that's miserable and impossible. But I do believe in good food and feeding yourself well, and having more organic farms in this country than not, which is not the case right now, obviously. But that's not what we're talking about here. If that was actually what we were focusing on, great. It's not. We're actually focusing on the weight on people's bodies and how immoral, essentially, these people are for not being able to get it together.
And that is crazy.
It's crazy and tragic because so many people who are quote unquote overweight have been on diets for their whole lives, trying to atone for the sin of their body size. Yeah. And it's just assumed that they must not care. They must not try. They must not. It is. It's so heartbreaking and so unfair.
And they're discriminated against, and it's the only socially acceptable way to have prejudice now, really, in society. And it's
exactly.
And it's just so. And I was going to ask you this, and we have to get back to your story eventually, but like, I get really, really sad about it, and I just feel like it's growing and growing and growing because of this health movement. And at the same time, like, there are food deserts and places in this country where like people don't have access to sustainably grown organic food or even real foods, whatever, which like sucks. And like, I want that to get better, but like that getting better is making this other problem worse. And then at the same time, people like you and I, who are like really have these addictive personalities, are getting this information, who don't really need the information, while the people who need the information aren't getting the information. It's just like this crazy conundrum. And yeah, do you get frustrated by it too?
Oh my God, it's so frustrating. The worst part is that almost every time that I choose to speak up about this, which I really do pick and choose, because people don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear that gaining weight or having weight on your body or being fat is not either the problem or the moral issue that everyone has turned it into. And there are some people who will listen to me and then say, yeah, I get it. But like, still, like, people who are really overweight, like, they just need to lose weight. And it's like, okay, but you didn't really hear me, because that, like, and that's become the scapegoat. Like, that's become what we've blamed everything on. Like, oh, well, they have a health problem. It's because they're fat.
And they're unexclusive or whatever. They're not connected.
Yes. Well, the cool thing about this Body Respect book, and there's so much similarity in what they're talking about between Health at Every Size and Body Respect. But I think there are even more examples that they're giving in Body Respect for these studies that have been done and ignored, but that there's often a correlation. People with certain health problems are often also fatter than people who don't have those health problems. But they've done studies that show that it's just a correlation. It's not the causation. Being fat is sometimes a symptom of a different metabolic thing. And instead, people are saying, well, they gained weight, so that's why they're unhealthy. But no, actually, maybe something else was going on. In fact, this is almost, this is more often the case, that there's something else going on, and therefore weight is a symptom along with the other symptoms, but it's become blamed as the cause.
Which is so sad, because then people don't get diagnosed for the real thing, and they don't treat the problem because they're just telling them it's the weight.
Exactly. I read something, I forget what I read it on, but maybe it was even, actually, I think it was in the book, that Linda Bacon was saying that she and her father both have the same knee problems. And when she went to the doctor, they said, oh, great. So you need to do these stretches. You need to do these strengthening exercises. You need to take this supplement. And this should really help your knee alignment, and it should really help the pain. And when her father went to the doctor, they were like, well, you're overweight. Oh, let me say first that her father is overweight, and I put that in quotes always. Mm-hmm. And Linda was not. So Linda went to the doctor. They gave her the solution, happily, sent her on her way. Her father went to the doctor, and they were like, well, you're overweight, so you need to lose weight. That's why you have knee pain. And they never told him about any of the other things that he could be doing, like the strengthening and the stretching and the supplement. They just said, well, you need to lose weight, and come back. Go on this diet, and then come back and see us when you lose weight, and we'll go from there. So he spent years then
with the knee pain,
trying to lose weight unsuccessfully on this diet plan. And finally, I think maybe that was around the time that Linda was doing all this research, she, intervened and was like, no, you just need to do these stretching. And it helped. Like the weight, yeah, it puts pressure on things, but it's not the cause. Yeah. That, like, people who go to the doctor who are overweight are, and fat is a better way to refer to it, because overweight means that there's a good weight to be and a not good weight to be. So people who are fat will go to the doctor, and it doesn't matter what's going on. The first thing that's pointed out is that they need to lose weight, whether that's true or not. In fact, they can be tested sometimes and their health is fine, and they'll say, but you should lose some weight or you're at risk. So it's so frustrating. Yeah. And the other thing is that, it's kind of, that people talk now about thin privilege. Right. And you mentioned it in your article that I read. This thin privilege that you don't even think about if you're a thin person going through your life, that if you were a fat person, people really will look at you differently because of this social stigma about what it means that you're fat. You must be lazy. You must be unhealthy. You must not care. You must really, it's...
And even in the media, and especially, it starts, I don't know if you've seen the trailer for Fatitude yet, but they talk about this in there, starting with, The Little Mermaid. The only fat character portrayed in that movie is Ursula, and she's the villain. And so we go through as little girls thinking, you don't want to be, you want to be Ariel,
I know. And the flip side of that is when we get to, Maleficent or something, who is really thin, it's this glamorized thing. It's ooh, well, she's a bad person, but I sort of want to be like her.
Yeah.
And it's just this weird, it's really tragic. And you and I, being in the position of having thin privilege and being able to be an ally for, body positivity and for fat rights and activism. To be a fat activist as a thin person is actually really important, because and I still get backlash. It doesn't matter what I say. Most people don't want to hear it, but they're more likely, and this is the sick part, they're more likely to listen to me than if I were fat and telling them why it's okay. They'd be like, well, okay, she's just telling herself that. But it's a total, it really is similar to being a straight ally to the gay community. They need straight allies, and to be a white ally to the Black community. It's essential. It's essential for progress to have people on both sides really defending their human rights. And it is amazing. I mean, it's totally taboo to be prejudiced against most groups, race, sexuality, but it is still fully
totally
okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, they're doing it to themselves. They're doing it to themselves. That's the like consensus that just is not true. And if anybody who's listening has ever been on a diet, in a diet repent cycle, you know that it kind of has a mind of its own. Yeah. And it really is amazing to look at. I mean, I know people in my life where they have done the diet repent thing at a higher weight because that's just where their weight sits. And once they've let go of that, they stabilized at a higher weight. They just did that. That's where their body wants to be. That's where they're perfectly healthy. That's where they've always been. They've been circling around it, losing some weight, gaining some weight. And then other people, my experience has been that when I really let it go and I did gain some weight, it was a really necessary part of the process. I have now stabilized at a low weight that was pretty much the median of where I always had been, gaining and losing around. So your body is so much more powerful and really able to regulate in this way that we think that there's something broken. We think that the fact that we can't lose weight and keep it off is because our bodies are broken and they're supposed to be smaller and I'm such a food addict and I can't do this right. And really what's happening is your body is brilliant and sabotaging you and saying like, we need to be a higher weight. Like, let's get back there. And it's pretty consistent because it doesn't often. Now there are times when people restrict and their body is like, and it gains a lot of weight and the set point goes way up. But it's actually more common that you have a set point that your body keeps on trying to comfortably find.
Yeah.
And people are so resistant, and it is easier said than done for me, for instance. I had a question recently, and it's one that I'm going to answer in my video Q&A series, but somebody wrote to me and said, so I see, and you have said that you are now thinner than you were for most of the time that you were dieting. I want to ask you a really honest question about that. Are you secretly happy that you
good question.
are thinner? Good question. Good, hard, interesting question. Are you secretly happy that you are thin now? And what do you think would happen if you did gain weight? And how do you feel about the idea of gaining weight again? And what do you think this means for somebody like me who's on the cusp in between being overweight and normal weight? And that's, her view of herself, that she's somewhere in between. But the answer for me is, do I feel lucky? I feel lucky on the thin privilege end. Mm-hmm. I can now be a fat activist that can come from this angle. I can support the anti-diet movement and be an example of why, because people will say, well, you can't not diet because you're just going to balloon up. And that's what happens when people don't diet. And I'm a proof of, no, your body does find its way. Dieting is not the answer for health and weight. However, I think about this all the time, that I had to, in order to get over the food stuff, I had to actively, and it was not easy, I had to keep reminding myself that I wanted to love myself however I fell, however my weight settled. I decided to gain weight. I decided that I would gain as much weight as I had to. I decided that wherever I landed, I would accept myself there and live my life there and enjoy it. And that was like the intellectual side. And then, of course, in the process, I had all my old fears and all my old beliefs and all of the, just all of the stuff that got me crazy with dieting in the first place was really testing me, and I had to kind of like push through all those things and unlearn all those things and do a lot of reading and a lot of work on figuring out why I was so afraid of that and why I was felt so vulnerable at a higher weight. And I did. I mean, I was wearing my size G bra that I like finally gave in and bought. And I bought all bigger clothes, and I was living my life like believing that I might be up there forever and constantly reminding myself that it was okay and it was what I wanted and that there was power in it. And once I was able to do that, my food normalized more and more and more. And the less I thought about it, and the less I worried about it, and the less that weight was what I was going for, the more normally I ate. And over the past 2 years, I've just lost weight, not even trying to. And that is crazy and amazing because it goes so against what I was trying to do for 10 years, obsessively dieting. Like the amount of energy I spent trying to lose weight, and really all it came down to was accepting whatever my body wanted to do. And this is even with this PCOS, this hormonal, syndrome that is apparently supposed to make your body like not be able to lose weight. That was not the issue. That wasn't even a part of it. The thing that was making me gain weight, and I would gain weight, I yo-yoed all over the place, my God, was the restriction. It was the low metabolism that was caused by crazy erratic eating patterns that were never, ever, ever consistent or ample. Like I was always trying to eat the smallest amount constantly. Mm-hmm. And so back to her question though, about do I wish or do I feel lucky that I'm thin? Mm-hmm. In a way I do. But in a way, I'm also kind of bummed that I wasn't able. I've spent about a year at a higher weight for me, very, very curvy, trying to feel good about it actively and having great days and then having low days and having great days. And the more great days I had, the more normal my eating became and the more I committed to it and really just decided to love this. And fat activists who are body positive, like fat models and plus size models, they were huge for me. Mm-hmm. They were so, no pun intended, they were like so radically helpful to see these women who were way bigger than I was. And I was having trouble accepting 15 extra pounds. They were curvy pounds. I mean, they really were. And I always thought that if I could just have small boobs, then people wouldn't notice my weight gain. It would just I could hide it better, which is just another weird excuse thing. But these women who love themselves and dress themselves well and wore cool makeup and had cool haircuts and were artists and musicians and writers and these awesome women who really inspired me. If they can do it, my God, I can do it. There's no reason why I can't like myself wherever I fall, because they are now the most extreme of this social, pariah, this horrible, hated prejudice against body type that are living awesome lives anyway, in spite of the fact that people give them such a hard time.
Yeah. And I think I learned this from our mutual friend, Isabel, who we both love her course. And in her course, she talks about how it's not that we're afraid of being fat, or it's about what we make fat mean, right?
Yes.
We associate thin with good, fat with bad from a young
Yes.
age, and we think that like, oh, our life, you can't have this really awesome rockin' life, but like those role models are so positive for us because we see that like, oh
They
no, like I can have a great life. Look at that girl, you know.
They
And
turn
so
it on its head.
yeah,
They turn that belief on its head, and it is so amazing
yeah,
to witness. Because like everywhere yes, exactly. Everywhere you look, every single movie that you watch,
yeah,
like the the fat character is like the one who doesn't have it together, who doesn't have the great life, who's just the friend, who's
yeah.
just, who's the comic relief.
Or like
And
hypersexualized even.
yes, that too. Never the leading lady or the leading man. And we all want to be the leading ladies and leading men of our own lives.
Except in Hairspray. Tracy Turnblad.
That is true. That's very true. Yeah, what a great thing. What a great show actually to have.
Yeah.
But everywhere else you look, it's like it's drilling it in a way that becomes so subconscious to us that we don't even realize what we think. We just know that fat is not acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even for people, like there are people who grow up with parents who are very, very, or mothers who are like really vocally afraid of weight, and like truly it's not hidden at all. And there are people where it doesn't even need to be said, or there are families where it doesn't even need to be said, but it's just like known. And that's like the culture at large. It's just known that fat is not acceptable. And that is what I want to, and we need to change. And I don't think it's going to be quick, because I almost think it's getting, as you said, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
It's like going to get worse before it gets better. But there is a big movement, there is a big movement.
Conversations like this.
Like the thing is that there's people who are getting better with it, and there are people that are getting worse. So like if you look at Melissa McCarthy as an example, there are people that are like, she is so awesome. She is such an amazing she's such an amazing role model, that she is a fat woman who is successful and who likes herself and talks about, positive body image, and that she is just this amazing presence. There are people who believe that. There are people who also are like, she is totally going to make people think that it's okay to be fat and it's not okay to be fat, and she likes herself, which is great. It's great that she likes herself, but being fat is not okay. And if she's going to make it seem like being fat is an okay lifestyle, then that's just not okay.
Ugh,
That's still
like, it makes me tear up to think
I know, because people believe it. It's like the it's actually almost harder to shake in a way than racism, because there are still people who are racist, and who it does not matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you do. They just believe what they believe, and it's horrible and backwards and twisted and like anti-human, but they believe it.
And they believe you can't change it though.
Yeah.
They at least know that like if someone's white, they can't change themselves to be black.
Exactly.
But with your weight, it's like
well, why can't they just get it together?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work that way.
Biodiversity exists and body diversity exists, and it's a good thing, because it would be so boring if it didn't.
I know. And also, like, to look back at and even still, even today, all the different cultures that have these different beauty standards. And it's amazing to see what was considered beautiful in a different time, because it just goes to show that our beauty standards are learned. But the other crazy thing is that people were doing this back then. I mean, the weight is different. Weight is like a new kind of prejudice that we now have. But people were doing this to themselves. Like women were, trying to gain weight so they could fit in.
Yeah.
And isn't that amazing that in the past, bigger bodies were accepted, but still women didn't think that they were enough if they were not the fad du jour of body and face
Whatever
and
it was.
coloring.
Yeah.
And, we're not even, even men too. They're not immune. They experience the same things that we do, just, culturally, it's a different level. And for better and for worse, they can't talk about it as much as we can.
That's interesting. I always thought of it like we definitely have it worse, which I think we might.
We do.
But I never thought about that. At least I can have this conversation and it's socially more acceptable.
Yeah, exactly. I read this, I think it was on the Huffington Post. There were all of these men, their faces weren't shown, but their bodies were shown, and they talked about their body insecurities. And so many of them said, well, sometimes I can talk about it with my female friends, but like guys it's not really okay to talk about it with guys.
Fascinating.
And it is fascinating because we look at it sometimes as being like oppressed by patriarchy, which I believe we are and we have been, and it's totally skewed. And the way women see themselves is often through the eyes of men and this society that's been ruled by men for so long. But at the same time, first of all, there are plenty of wonderful feminist men, and they are experiencing similar things to what we're experiencing now in the age of, GQ and male models, and they are starting to feel the pressure as well. And I don't know if that's coming from a more balanced society. I don't know if now.
Yeah, I guess
I'm not sure.
From a feminist perspective, perhaps that's progress, but I don't think it's the type of progress that we need. It's like drawing them into the part that's bad about
exactly. Because what we want
is the opposite.
We want everyone to be empowered. Like the point is, we want every single person who is born and who lives to grow up knowing that they are important and that they are valuable and that they are loved and that things as they are, and that the things that they think and say matter. If everybody grew up thinking that and believing that, our world would be an amazing, amazing place. And that's the goal.
Yeah.
And it's a lofty goal, but it's worth going towards, because that heals so many things from the inside out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, this conversation has been amazing. Thanks for listening. You made it all the way to the end. I'll be back next week, but until then, let's stay inspired and keep this conversation going. So tweet at me at Katie Dalebout and our guest with your aha moments from this conversation. And like the Wellness Wonderland on Facebook, so we can all hang out there and discuss how inspired we are and how we'll apply it in our daily lives. And never miss another episode or post from me by signing up for email updates on thewellnesswonderland.com. See you back in Wonderland.